I heard the fork hit the plate before I heard my mother say it. That sharp little metallic tap that somehow echoed louder than the words that followed. "You're not half the woman your sister is, Janette." She didn't even look at me when she said it. She just kept cutting into her salmon like the sentence wasn't meant to open a wound. Like it wasn't meant to slice into the 3 years of quiet sacrifices I'd made to keep this family standing. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Not loudly. Not violently. Just a soft, final click, like a lock turning on a door I should have closed a long time ago. I pushed my chair back. Slowly. Calmly. My hands were steady even though my heart was beating like it wanted out of my chest. And I said the one truth they never expected to hear. "Mom, you've been praising the wrong daughter." She looked up then. My dad froze with his napkin halfway to his mouth. My sister, Danielle, blinked like she'd misheard me, because in her world, I was supposed to stay quiet. But I didn't sit back down. I stood there, feeling the weight of 3 years pressing against my ribs. That night didn't just expose a lie, it rewrote our entire family story. And if you've ever been overlooked, erased, or compared to someone else in your own home, then, keep listening. Because justice doesn't always arrive loudly. But it arrives. And before I get too deep, if this already hits a nerve, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know who's sitting across this story with me tonight. I grew up in a suburb outside Sacramento, one of those California towns where every neighborhood has its own unwritten ranking system. The best lawns, the best colleges, the best kids. And in our house, that ranking system had only one name at the top, Danielle. My sister was the golden girl. The one teachers adored. The one relatives bragged about. The one my mother introduced as my pride. And me? I was the other daughter. The quiet one. The "she's sweet, but girl." There was always a but. But she's not as charming. But she's not as confident. But she's not Danielle. It wasn't one big moment. It was 1,000 small ones. Like the time my mom whispered, "Wear something simple. Don't draw attention away from your sister." Or when my dad shrugged and said, "You'll understand someday, Janette. Some people just shine brighter." Little quiet cuts. The kind that don't leave marks on skin, but leave them everywhere else. I learned early to keep my head down and my mouth shut. But here's the thing they never noticed. Quiet kids see everything. Every flaw hidden under celebration. Every truth buried under praise. Every sacrifice someone thinks they got away with not acknowledging. I watched them adore my sister. I watched them forget me. And I watched the house payments stack higher and higher until something had to give. And what gave was me. I just never thought nobody would know. It started 3 years before that dinner. The day my dad called sounding older than I'd ever heard him. "Sweetheart, we're falling behind on the mortgage." My parents weren't irresponsible. They weren't extravagant. They were just 2 middle-class Californians drowning in rising costs and medical bills and a downturned market. The house I grew up in, the house full of every childhood memory I had, was weeks away from foreclosure. I remember asking, "Does Danielle know?" My dad's voice dipped. "No. And, please don't tell her. She has so much on her plate. She had a wedding coming up. A bachelorette trip. A rehearsal weekend." Meanwhile, I'd been working 2 jobs since college because I didn't have the luxury of being the favorite. I told my dad I'd think about it. But I already knew. I couldn't let them lose the home. Not that home. Not like that. So I took over the payments. Quietly. Anonymously. Every month for 3 years. I watched my savings drain. I put off grad school. I lived in a studio apartment with a window that didn't open. Every bill I paid for them felt like swallowing a stone. Heavy. Necessary. Silent. But here's the part that still burns. They never asked who stepped in. They never cared to find out. They just assumed it was Danielle. Their perfect girl. Their bright, talented, effortlessly adored daughter. And she never corrected them. Not once. That was my first cliffhanger with this family, the moment I realized the truth could be standing right in front of them and they still wouldn't see it. But the next one? The next one would change everything. 6 months before that dinner, something shifted. My mother started telling people a story where Danielle saved the family home. She'd smile this soft, proud smile and say, "Our Danielle stepped up when we needed her. She's always been responsible like that." I remember hearing it for the first time at a 4th of July cookout. I stood 5 feet away, holding a tray of watermelon, listening to my mom rewrite history like I wasn't even there. Danielle didn't deny it. She just tucked her hair behind her ear and accepted the praise with this modest, fake little smile. I walked home early that day. I didn't stay for fireworks. I didn't trust myself not to break in half. Because silence is one thing. But being erased? Being replaced in your own sacrifice? That hits a different part of your chest. I told myself it wasn't worth a fight. I told myself keeping them safe mattered more than being acknowledged. But that lie had an expiration date. And its time was coming. Because the night everything cracked wasn't about the mortgage. It was about something much, much bigger. My mom invited us all over for dinner to celebrate Danielle. Again. She'd just gotten some local award for community outreach. Something she barely put effort into, but my parents acted like she'd cured a disease. We sat around the table, and me, Danielle, my parents, surrounded by the smell of lemon chicken and rosemary potatoes. My mom poured wine into Danielle's glass first. Always first. Always her. The conversation was the usual: Danielle's successes, Danielle's wedding, Danielle's volunteer work. Then my mom sighed dramatically. "Janette, you could learn a thing or two from your sister." My fork paused halfway to my mouth. I felt the heat behind my ears. And then she said it. The sentence that became the title of my story. "You're not half the woman your sister is." My dad didn't defend me. Danielle didn't flinch. It wasn't new. It wasn't surprising. It was just final. And inside me, something slid into place. Something cold. Something clear. I pushed my chair back and stood. Then I said the line that shifted the ground under all of us. "Mom, you've been praising the wrong daughter." The room went silent. My heartbeat wasn't. What I did next would either burn everything down or finally bring the truth into the light. Here is the turning point line, the moment I stopped being the quiet daughter. "I'm done letting you rewrite my life just because it's easier than seeing me." My mom blinked like she'd never heard my voice before. My dad set his fork down. Danielle crossed her arms, ready to be the victim. I'd rehearsed this confrontation 100 times in my head. But nothing prepared me for how peaceful I felt in the moment. Like telling the truth wasn't an explosion, it was letting air back into my lungs. I told them everything. Every payment. Every sacrifice. Every month I kept their house from foreclosure. My mom's face drained of color. My dad's jaw slackened. Danielle muttered, "That's not true." The bank said. I cut her off. The bank said someone paid. It never said you did. That ended her. But I wasn't done. Not even close. You never asked, I said. Because you didn't want the answer. You wanted your favorite daughter to stay perfect. And you wanted me to stay invisible. The quiet after that was thicker than grief. But the truth? The truth was just getting started. My parents were shaking their heads, trying to fit my words into the version of reality they'd lived in for years. So I pulled out the envelope. The one I'd brought months earlier but never had the courage to use. Inside were printouts of every payment confirmation. Every wire transfer. Every automatic draft. 3 years of evidence. 3 years of my life. I placed them in the center of the table like cards in a poker game. Here, I said. Look at the woman you keep saying I'm not. My mom's hand trembled as she picked up the first sheet. My dad squinted through his glasses. Danielle didn't touch anything. The room filled with the sound of paper, soft, fragile, undeniable. Finally my dad whispered, "Why didn't you tell us?" Because I wanted you to see me without being told. Because I thought love didn't require announcements. Because I didn't think I had to prove I was yours. But I didn't say any of that. I just said. Because you never asked. And that was the truth that cracked them open. But the fallout? The fallout wasn't done rising. If you've ever had to prove your worth to people who should have already seen it, let me know in the comments. I promise you're not alone. You'd think the worst part was them giving my sister credit. It wasn't. The worst part was what I learned next. My dad cleared his throat and said, We thought Danielle needed the praise more than you did." Imagine hearing that. Imagine being told your own parents ration love like it was food, and you weren't hungry enough. And then my mother spoke. "Janette, you've always been independent. Strong. Danielle, she needs reassurance." There it was. The quiet truth behind years of favoritism. They didn't celebrate Danielle because she earned it. They celebrated her because they believed she couldn't handle life without applause. And they didn't celebrate me because they assumed I could survive without it. It was twisted. It was painful. It was almost laughable. I wasn't invisible by accident. I was invisible by design. Not because I was less. But because they believed I could absorb the silence. They mistook resilience for lack of need. They mistook independence for lack of feeling. They mistook me for someone who didn't require love. Their mistake. Not mine. But mistakes have consequences. And theirs were about to arrive. I didn't want revenge that night. Not the loud kind. Not the dramatic, movie-style kind. I wanted truth. I wanted balance. I wanted the years back that they'd handed to Danielle like candy. So I did something simple. Something clean. Something they couldn't twist. I told them I was done paying the mortgage. Not as a threat. As a boundary. As a declaration of my own worth. "You want to praise Danielle?" I said. "Let her carry something real." My dad looked terrified. My mom looked like she'd been slapped. Danielle looked exposed. Because suddenly, being the favorite came with responsibility. And she wasn't built for that weight. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult anyone. I just rewrote the rules. "You will not erase me again," I said. "Not in this house. Not in this family." And with that, I took back something bigger than money. I took back my place. 2 weeks later, we attended a neighborhood barbecue. My parents' friends were there. So were Danielle's in-laws. Usually, these events were Danielle's showcases, little stages where she glowed and I stood in the wings. Not this time. Someone asked my mom how Danielle managed to save their home. My mom hesitated. It was the first time I'd ever seen her swallow her words. Then, to everyone's surprise, she did something unbelievable. She said, "Actually, it wasn't Danielle." People turned. Danielle's in-laws leaned in. "It was Janette," my mother said, voice thin. "She's the reason we still have our house." I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I didn't step forward into the spotlight she'd always denied me. I just nodded politely. Because the truth wasn't about applause. It was about balance. But watching my mother struggle to form the words, that was its own kind of justice. Quiet. Necessary. Complete. My parents tried, after that night. Not perfectly. Not quickly. But they tried. They apologized in awkward, stumbling ways. They asked how my week was. They remembered small details for the first time. But something fundamental had shifted. Not broken, just rearranged. I didn't rush back into closeness. I didn't crave their approval anymore. I didn't twist myself into shapes that made me smaller. I visited less often. I spoke calmly. I enforced boundaries without guilt. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't punishment. It was reclamation. A rebuilding with space between the bricks. A relationship with room to breathe. A family dynamic that finally acknowledged the truth. I was never half anything. And I didn't need their applause to be whole. Do my parents love me now? Yes. Did they love me before? Yes, just in a way that missed its mark. But now, they see me. Not as Danielle's shadow. Not as the strong one who doesn't need anything. Not as the backup daughter. They see me as Janette. A full woman. A complete story. A daughter who carried more than they ever realized, and who finally put some of it down. Danielle and I? We're civil. Not close. Not enemies. Just two adults whose childhood roles finally expired. And my parents? They learned that silence has consequences. That love given unevenly can still be corrected. That seeing your child clearly is a choice, one they have to make every day. As for me, I'm free. Free from comparison. Free from the hunger for their approval. Free from the weight of being the strong one. I built my own life now. My own home. My own peace. And the truth? I'm not half the woman my sister is. I'm not double either. I'm something neither of us has ever been taught to be. Enough. Exactly as I am. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Some families confuse strength with invulnerability. Some confuse silence with lack of feeling. Some confuse favoritism with love. But you are allowed to draw boundaries. You are allowed to take credit for your labor. You are allowed to rewrite the story that erased you. And sometimes, justice is not loud. Sometimes it's a quiet truth placed gently on a table. And the world rearranges itself around it. If this story spoke to something in you, tell me in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Your stories, your voice, they matter more than you think.